leaders lie to their own public? Now, the question you want to ask yourself, and really this is the $64,000 question, is why is this the case? Why did I find that there's not much interstate lying, and there's actually quite a bit of lying by leaders to their domestic publics? Publics tend to trust their leaders. After all, our leaders are tasked with the mission of protecting us. They're part of the same tribe that we're in. We expect them to look out for our welfare. There's trust there that doesn't exist among states. Just to give you a good example to highlight this, J. William Fulbright, who was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and a very powerful senator, and who was very skeptical about Vietnam, but nevertheless helped President Johnson push through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, despite his skepticism about Vietnam. He said afterwards, the biggest lesson I learned from Vietnam is not to trust government statements. I had no idea until then. I like to tell the story that in the run-up to the Iraq War, I heard Scott Ritter, who was a weapons inspector, talk about the presence of WMD in Iraq. And after listening to Ritter talk, I was convinced that Iraq did not have WMD. He was so knowledgeable and so convincing. I said, he's got to be right. A few weeks later, I heard Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld say that we know that Iraq has WMD because we know where they are. And I said to myself, the Secretary of Defense wouldn't say that if he didn't know where they are, right? So maybe Scott Ritter was making a good faith effort in giving us his assessment of the situation, but I think he's probably just wrong, and Rumsfeld obviously has access to information that Ritter does not have access to, and he wouldn't lie to us in such a bold-faced way. So I changed my mind, and I then went about telling people that there was good reason to think that he did have WMD, when in fact, of course, he didn't, and Rumsfeld was lying to us. But you see, in my case, as in Fulbright's case, and this may have been true of many of you, we trusted our leaders. And it's really hard for a country to function well if nobody trusts their leaders, right? So it's that presence of trust that makes lying to one's public much easier to pull off. However, it is important to understand that there is a real downside to lying. And I think that's especially true when you talk about fear-mongering. Not so much interstate lies, but fear-mongering. And let me tell you what the two real dangers associated with lying are, and then let me talk about how each of those dangers relates to fear-mongering. The two dangers are what I call blowback and backfiring. Now, what exactly is blowback? Blowback is where a leader who lies to his or her public about foreign policy soon finds him or herself lying about domestic politics and fostering what I would call a culture of dishonesty. If a leader feels compelled to lie to the public about a foreign policy threat, what that leader is in effect saying is that the public can't deal with the issue by being told the truth. There's just something wrong with the public. It's either not sophisticated enough, it's too ignorant, or it doesn't care. It could be any one of these reasons. But the public, right, has to be manipulated to do the right thing. That's what fear-mongering is really all about. As you surely understand, it's not a giant leap to go from making that kind of calculation about foreign policy to making the same calculation about domestic policy and lying to your public on both fronts. And that fosters a culture of dishonesty, in my opinion, and it is very dangerous because there's no way that a society can function well if dishonesty is rampant. The mainstream media has basically abandoned its interest in ferreting out the truth and challenging the administration, and instead has become a useful tool for presidents who want to tell lies to the American people.
Islam is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism.
As I said, the mainstream media doesn't do much investigative journalism anymore. The American mainstream media is basically toothless. You young people in the audience can't appreciate it because you don't remember when the American mainstream media actually had some bite. But I can assure you it's toothless now, and presidents manipulate it with great ease.
The Quran, which incidentally, if you read, demonstrates Islam is a peaceful and harmonious religion.
And so if we accept the views of our lead police officer for child protection, of Rotherham's MP, and of the recent Jay and Quilliam reports, we seem to be looking at millions of rapes of white and Sikh girls by Muslim men.
Finally, let me just say in conclusion that the countries that fearmonger the most are democracies that wage preventive wars against distant threats. Again, the countries in which leaders lie to their publics most often about foreign threats are countries that are democracies that wage preventive wars against distant threats. It seems that we should expect to have lots more evidence of fear-mongering in the years ahead. And therefore, it will probably be the case that when I come back here in 20 years to talk about the new edition of my book, I will reference Eric Alterman's second volume on presidential lying. Thank you.
We know the way through this pandemic is by getting everyone vaccinated.